Hey everybody, I want to do an abbreviated around the world update here. I got a few things going on in a couple of my tanks and I want to mention them before I get too far ahead of myself and forget to mention them later in a more thorough around the world update. So this is my 29-gallon miscellaneous tank. I've had 3 angelfish in here. If you remember, I was having aggression issues between this larger one and this medium-sized one, and I call this one a medium-sized one because as of a couple days ago there was a very small one in the tank, and she is no longer with us. I believe she was just simply getting old and worn out, and it was time to euthanize her. She didn't even have the strength to swim away from the filter intake, so she's gone. And in the meantime, I have noticed spawning behavior from my large one again. No indication that this one over here is paired off or anything like that. It seems like this one over here is just kind of doing its own thing, but she is definitely showing spawning behavior. So I did shoot a little bit of video about this, talking a little more in depth. I'll attach a card if you want to look at that video. You can. I just wanted to mention it in this one so you can see the aggression towards the other predatory fish. She's definitely acting as though she's preparing a spawning site and even going through the motion of laying eggs, despite the fact that she's not actually depositing any eggs. Interesting. Not a lot going on in my gourami tank. I do think I found out what was wrong with my floating water sprite. Again, if you follow along, you'll know I've been having I've been dosing with trace minerals just to see if I could bring the health of that water sprite back up to snuff, because it's growing kind of funny. And I finally realized what I think is going on, and that is simply that the gouramis in this tank munch the hell out of all of the roots. And I know they look like nice, pretty, healthy roots, but they're really not. They've really been brutalized. When we get around the other side of the room, we'll be looking at another one of my tanks that has one of these in it, and you'll get to see what a real root system looks like, and it's very much more lush and flowing than this. So I think the limited root system is consequently limiting the nutrient uptake and intake, not to mention the fact that the plant is constantly having to do damage control and repair its damaged root systems. And I think a result of all of that is my unusual and abnormal growth. It really is suffering from nutrient deficiencies, but not because there's a deficiency of nutrients in the water. Simply, it's not able to take them up because of its brutalized root system. So I think that's the problem. I think I've solved it, and we can move on and stop worrying about trying to get that to grow. And in the meantime, I'm going to have to get in here and actually start thinning out some of the red tiger lotus in there. That stuff's just growing out of control. I've pulled several runners out that, that scout for the surface and shoot those little leaves up. I've pulled several of them out this week, and I'm going to have to get in there pretty soon and start pulling some of those larger leaves out, because they're even getting kind of out of control. I absolutely love when my gold gourami sits back in here in these leaves. I swear she knows how beautiful she looks sitting in there. It's just amazing. She's really hard to see too. She really blends in and just becomes one with that water sprite, or the tiger lotus in there. Absolutely beautiful combination of the two, the gold gourami and the red tiger lotus. And then, of course, the moonlight gouramis are just silver, and they sort of take on the hue and reflect the color of whatever's around them. So the moonlight gouramis look good no matter where they are. There's another one of them over here. I have 2 in this tank. So, moving on, my actual angelfish tank. Not a ton going on in here. I did remove a little more gravel this week. If you follow along, as I say, you will know that I've been trying to get all this white substrate out of there. I'm going to replace it with a dark substrate that I like, and I made a little more progress on that today. The only other thing I got going on in this tank is I noticed a little while ago, these two are a mated pair. The male being the albino and the female being this little mixed veil down here. And I saw her not long ago on this brand new Anubias leaf, pecking and cleaning and grooming at it. So usually when I'm seeing that, it's only a matter of a day or two before I've got another spawn, and who knows, maybe someday we will actually get some babies out of these two. I might just pick the leaf. If I get a spawn on a leaf again, that would be easy enough to just snip the leaf with my scissors and put that in a tank with an air stone, and just see what happens and see if I can get some babies. Because I think if that was the daddy, and this long, beautiful, I know not everybody likes these veil tails and these mixed veils, but I think they're beautiful. And with her and all her long finnage and everything and all those beautiful fins mixed with him, I think would make some really pretty babies. Or, if nothing else, at least really interesting babies. So someday maybe we'll do that. I don't really have any desire to breed them, but you never know, I might. And I'll give you one look at my Chinese algae eater since he's out. Give you an idea how big he's getting. And for future reference, long ago I placed this bar in front of this tank, and I move it around from time to time, but every one of those marks you see on there is an inch. So if you ever are looking at this tank and you see fish down near the bottom and you see them anywhere near these markings, those are all 1-inch designations. So as we just saw my Chinese algae eater, I'm guessing if we rewind a little bit there and go back, we will see that it's probably about 6 to 7 inches by now. It's getting pretty sizable. Not a small fish. I know they sell them, at the big chain pet stores for you to bring home and put in your 10-gallon tank for algae control, but it's really not a good idea. They get pretty big. They get fairly aggressive too. So, my black ghost knifefish tank. I treated this recently for the blue-green slime cyanobacteria. I had it in there pretty thorough. Not that it was overwhelming me. I was just sort of keeping on top of it and doing water changes and just treating it like I would treat any other algae. I just kind of controlled it and stayed on top of it. But I finally decided once and for all I'm going to really try to tackle it. I got it in there when I first set this tank up. All those rocks and wood came from the outside local environments, streams and reservoirs around here. And I deliberately didn't really sterilize them. I thought of it in terms of like live rock and live wood. And so I probably brought lots of stuff in that has died off over the years, but I've still always struggled with that blue-green cyanobacteria. So once and for all, I'm trying to get rid of it now. And I did a back-to-back double-dose treatment on it, and it didn't quite get it all. There was still a little bit left in there. And in particular, if you will look right at, let's see where my finger is, this little frond right there of that Java fern, you see how it's got that sort of green fuzz on top of it? That is most definitely the green cyanobacteria. So if it's there and it's that visible, then it's obviously still in the tank because it's there, but it's also everywhere else. Honestly, if it was only right there, that would still be too much because it would simply be a matter of time before I had it all through the tank again. So what I'm doing now is I'm raising those bubbles directly through this fern because that's where the biggest concentration of the cyanobacteria was. It was just all over that fern, directly under those lights like that. It was just growing like crazy in there. And so the process of killing it uses oxygen. I don't know how it works, but it needs a lot of oxygen and water circulation. So I'm doing it right this time. I put a little heavy dose in it, and I'm running all of the airstone right through that fern. So if that's not as oxygenated as possible, with plenty of water circulation to move all that water through that fern and get in all the nooks and crannies, this should be my final attempt to get it out of there. I'm probably going to do the same thing. I'll do a double dose back to back. You put it in there, you wait 2 days, do a water change, and instead of just filling it back up and calling it good, I'll fill it back up and then I'll put another dose in it, and we'll give it 2 more days of the water being circulated with the airstone and everything. And after 4 days of a heavy treatment, I think I should knock it out of there for good once and for all, and we'll be done with it. So cross your fingers. Let's hope for the best on that one. My native tank. Nothing really going on in here this week. I do want to point out how big that tilapia back there is getting. And the Mayan cichlid, not growing super fast, but the Mayan cichlid is still getting fairly sizable. Those two are going fairly soon. I've got a friend that wants the Mayan cichlid, and I'm going to take the tilapia down to my local fish store and sell that probably for a few dollars. I have my mystery fish in here that has been more or less identified, and that is my mud sunfish. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do with the mud sunfish just yet. I'm probably going to leave it in the tank, to be honest with you. They don't get very big, and they're interesting. It's not a particularly attractive fish, but it's an interesting looking fish. And since I never heard back from the guy I contacted at the Department of Natural Resources. Whether it is or it isn't, whether he wants it or not, I don't know, but he didn't seem to worry too much about it or seem overly enthusiastic, so I'm not going to make a big deal out of it either. I can say positively, however, that I will not be releasing it into the wild or anything like that. If it doesn't stay in this tank, it will go somewhere proper and responsible. It's not just going to get tossed in my local stream or reservoir, even though they are kind of sort of native to this area. But I was out the reservoir the other day, and I did see some baby fish swimming around. I did a little bit of fishing just to see if I could catch some bluegills or sunfish or something, you know, nice and easy. And I got nothing. I didn't see any signs of them. So it's still a little early in the year, but hopefully it will not be long before we can get out and start stocking this tank up. I still, you know, a lot of it's just going to depend on what I catch and what kind of mood I'm in, and if I catch something really cool and pretty and unusual. So before you ask me how I plan on stocking this yet, I'm not 100% sure. The only thing I can say is it's going to have sunfish in it. Don't know what else it'll have, but it's definitely going to have at least a few sunfish in here, and then we'll go from there. Oh, snail tank, nothing going on in here. I don't know if I mentioned it or not a while ago, but the eggshells I had put in there for calcium to sort of harden the water up had finally dissolved away. It had been a couple of years, but no, I just saw a shrimp in the back of the tank, so some of the shrimp are still in there. At least that one is. Oh, I see another one. There's at least 2 shrimp still in there. So those eggshells sort of dissolved away into nothingness, and I've thrown some fresh eggshells in there about 2 weeks ago. So there's your update on my snail tank. It's got new eggshells in it. My gudgeon and T-bar tank, I got nothing going on in here. Just the same old, same old. I've been dosing it a little bit with the trace mineral. I don't know how well that's going to do for the plants. I'm still on the fence about what I'm even going to do with the plants in this tank. So this tank is one that just doesn't, you know, it doesn't give me any problems or trouble. The plants in there may not look beautiful at the moment, but I don't really care. It's not hurting anything. I'll get around to doing something with this one whenever, you know, I just get around to doing it, or I'm in the mood to doing it, or an idea strikes me, or I've got some leftover plants from some other tank that need a new home and they'll wind up in here, or, you know, something will happen. So be patient. Keep following along. Make sure you're subscribed. That way you don't miss the updates as I do them. And eventually this tank will become something even better than it is now, which admittedly is still pretty cool. I like it the way it is. And my T-bar in here is just amazing. I love this fish. And I don't even mind his construction. Once I sort of made peace with it and decided I'm just going to let him make the tank however he wants it, and I'll just leave him to it, I've actually kind of, you know, I like it. I think it's cool. I like the way he sort of terraforms his own terrain. He is in there constantly moving and shifting and digging. So a lot of fun to watch. My 125 gallon. Nothing going on really in this tank either. I did promise you that when we got around to this side of the room, if you'll remember way back, we looked at a root system on a water sprite that was all munched up. Well, that's the root system on a water sprite that looks good and healthy, and that's what it should look like. I do have the gourami in this tank. That first fish we looked at back here is a snakeskin gourami, and it does eat the roots to some degree, but not a whole lot. If you look right there real closely, you can see one of my chocolate zebra, I'll say plecos, but it's an ancestor species. I go over this every time I talk about them. Really cool fish. I have 3 of them in here. So that gourami doesn't do a ton of damage to the root system on this. It does munch on them and nibble on them, but it's in here by itself. It's only the one gourami, and it's in a large tank, whereas the other tank is much smaller and has 4 gouramis in it. So the damage that gets done to that root system is substantial, whereas this one is not. So nothing else really going on in this tank. Just thought we'd have a look at it as we go around the world. Same thing with my puffer tank. Nothing really going on in there. Butterbean's just in there doing his thing. I did do a water change recently, and I did get a question about this tank, and I was asked how I do water changes and keep the salinity stable and, you know, come out the other end of the water change with the same specific gravity as I started with. So I do plan on actually doing a video on this tank where I'm going to walk you through a water change step by step. We're going to discuss the brackish water. We're going to discuss how I make it, why I do the things I do, so on and so forth. It's been a while since I've done a video that really kind of talks about a brackish tank and what brackish water is and how to maintain it properly and so on and so forth. So we'll get to that coming up pretty soon. Again, you know, I'll remind you, make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss it when I do come up with it. And still, after all these years, Butterbean really does not like having a camera pointed at him. I just don't know why it is, but he's just still shy around the camera. Moving on to my quarantine tank. I did get some new fish this week. I got some hatchet fish. One of them died. I kind of suspected that when it came home. It was swimming a little listlessly on the day it came home. So I really didn't expect it to recover. When you get fish from the big chain pet stores, it's not terribly unusual for you to lose one or two of them, especially if you're buying a group of 5 or 6 at a time. So I did lose one. Everybody else still seems fairly healthy, but it's only been a couple of days, so we're going to give that some time. The other fish in here are my female pregnant guppies, and they're just going to live in here temporarily until I can get something going on and find out what kind of babies they're having, etc. The fish that were in this tank have all made their way to their new homes, and I've already shot videos about all of them and updated everybody on the tanks that they're in. So nothing really going on in the quarantine tank either. And last but certainly not least is my red-clawed crab tank, and boy are these guys making a mess of their tank. If we look around the bottom, you can see sort of little bits of detritus and little bits of algae and moss, and it's just stuff that the crabs have ripped up and torn out and moved around. The crabs are getting a little more outgoing as time goes on. You can see 2 more of them right there. It's really fun to sit here and watch them pick through stuff and eat things. Just got another one that came out right here, sticking his little head out and seeing what's going on. But if you will actually look around the surface of the tank, look at all the mud, and look at my bit of moss right here that's just completely pulled down and thrown over there. I don't even know where to put it. These plants used to be tucked underneath the moss. So there you go. Slap it all back together. Hope for the best. Everything's getting all chomped up and chewed up. The moss back there is turning red. I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent. I don't know if that's part of its normal life cycle. I don't know if it's the brackish water doing it to it. I'm not really sure. But like I've always said, this tank is going to be very flexible and we can change it around as things go on. Here's another. All this moss is getting all sort of brown and dead looking, and I've got these just lying underneath of it in hopes that they'll absorb enough moisture from the moss. But so far the crabs are the ones that are doing the most destruction in there. So there you have it. That's your round the world update. We're back to where we started at my 29-gallon miscellaneous tank. Thanks for watching. I know this was still a little longer than I was hoping it would be, but for me that was a pretty short round the world update. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.